There's no way to predict which horse will be the next great one. Some runners, like the surprise champion of 1977, literally gallop out of nowhere. Since the days of the Calumet dynasty, horse farms have undergone radical changes. Gone are the days when a farm breeds and races its own thoroughbreds.
There's a few old line operations like the Phipps's and Claiborne Farm and a few others. It's still basically Overbrook Farm that rely on their homebreds, but there's not many of them left.
Most farm owners leave the financial risk of racing horses to others and concentrate instead on breeding and boarding. In 1975, Mickey and Karen Taylor arrived at the Fassig-Tipton auction in Lexington, Kentucky. Mickey was a logger from Washington State. He and his wife Karen thought they could purchase a few modestly priced thoroughbreds, win a couple of races, then sell their horses for a profit. While scanning the auction pavilion, a handsome colt caught the couple's eye.
He had pizzazz and he had energy, and when the first time we saw him walk out of the stall, he came out with a burst, and he was a walker, and he had some kind of energy and power, and he was awesome.
Unfortunately, the object of their affection was also out of their price range.
I was a little panicked because we kind of set a budget, and things were going kind of a little bit beyond the budget.
Karen and Mickey only planned to spend $15,000, but soon they found themselves upping their bids.
I went to $16,500, and it stayed there a little while, and then I went to $17,000, and I got a real good elbow.
So I gave Mickey the elbow and to get him jacked up to kind of get his hand in the air again.
I don't know if they took the bid spot or took Karen's elbow as a bid or raised my hand.
He knew when he got that elbow that he was supposed to bid another time.
Karen's elbow was the main thing that I had to keep. I kept bidding. My life was in jeopardy.
He did, and we were very fortunate. We got Slew.
And we bought him for $17,500.
Being from the Northwest, the couple named their new colt Seattle Slew. He was a good-looking horse, but Mickey and Karen expected little from their modestly priced yearling.
What we're trying to do is, buy a bulldog on the block is what you'd say, race, and then, sell them.
But over time, it became clear that Seattle Slew was no ordinary horse. He had an aggressive disposition, a self-motivating will that was unrelenting.
Seattle Slew has a very distinct personality. Seattle Slew is a very kind and generous horse as long as you ask him. You do not give him instructions. He will do whatever you ask him to do. If you give him an order, you're in trouble. You just ask him, and he will cooperate. He's very generous. But you don't want to get into a fight with him because you'll lose.
Slew never even bothered to warm up. As a 2-year-old, he entered just 3 races. He won them all.
I don't think you could call it pure luck, because you had to have people who saw something in the horse. He was not a particularly well-bred horse by the standards of the most fashionable sales. He was a very sprightly, appealing kind of horse to them, so you got to give him some credit for seeing that this horse had potential.
In May 1977, Seattle Slew stood calmly in the paddock at Churchill Downs. The horse that 2 years earlier had sold for just a few $1,000s was about to run in the Kentucky Derby.
Caro, as you look at the number 3 horse, Seattle Slew. Make it, Eddie.
Well, I'll tell you, Seattle Slew has broke out.
They're at the post. And they're up. Seattle Slew broke slowly.
He had his head cocked sideways, and they sprung the latch, and he came out and hit the gate, and he was probably 5 lengths, which is 5 lengths is 1 second. He was 1 second behind everyone else, and he just basically bullied his way through.
Entering the home stretch, a horse named For the Moment was in the lead. But Slew found his extra gear and motored ahead to victory.
In the third, it's Seattle Slew, however, that takes it over at the head of the stretch. Seattle Slew moving away, now opens 2.5. Run Dusty. It's going to be.
It's one of those thrills that you have that is hard to explain. You know, just like, you know, walking on air.
It was an exciting win, but one that earned Slew little respect. Word around the stable was Slew had beaten a field of deadbeats. Just a good horse in a bad lot, many said. However, the criticism hardly dampened the Taylors' enthusiasm.
We knew we had a nice horse. He's done everything that we ever asked him to do.
And the Taylors weren't finished asking. 2 weeks after the Derby, they headed to Pimlico Racecourse for the Preakness.
What Slew would do is when he'd get in the gate, he would just blow himself up, and then he'd just burst out of the gate. That he would, like, his whole being, he would just, his heart and his lungs, he'd just pump everything up and blow and explode out of the gate.
They're off. They break away on the outside. It's Seattle Slew. Run Dusty, run down along the rail. It's Cormorant. They swing around the clubhouse turn. It's Seattle Slew on the outside. Cormorant along the rail. They match strides as they swing around the turn. They go to the backstretch. It's Cormorant along the rail. On the outside, Seattle Slew. They match strides. They continue down the stretch. Cormorant now takes a slight lead. Seattle Slew on the outside second. On the outside, it's Seattle Slew in second place. Along the inside, Iron Constitution 4 lengths back. They come to the top of the stretch with a quarter of a mile to go. It's Seattle Slew in front. Cormorant in second. A 16th of a mile to run. It's Seattle Slew. Iron Constitution charging on the outside. Coming on to the finish. Seattle Slew in front by 2 lengths.
Slew had now won the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. He'd also won the respect of the racing community.
He'd come in with some hype, being an unbeaten horse coming in. But in those first 2 races, he had really backed it up. And the most positive thing is that as he headed toward the Belmont Stakes, he was training very well. And you knew he was an exceptionally talented horse, and there was great anticipation that he was going to get it done. And, you know, especially on the heels of Secretariat, because everybody knew it was possible again. That 25-year-old jinx, the hex had been broken.
The Triple Crown was only 1 race away.
He loves this racetrack, and so we're kind of really glad to be here.
But on race day, the track was a sloppy mess from an early morning downpour. The Taylors' confidence was shaken. They weren't sure how their horse would run in the mud.
In the morning of the race, it rained, I think, something like 2.5, 3 inches. And we went to the racetrack that morning, and it was a sea. And, you know, you just hope that he doesn't mind the mud. And then in the race, they went so slow, the first 6 furlongs. They went like 1:14 and 2. Well, he gallops in the morning that fast. And then you think, well, maybe we're going too slow. And, you know, going 1.5 miles, you have a lot of time to try to think. And, but then, you know, when he came around the turn, he just opened up again, and, you know, he won it very easily.
Seattle Slew has 4 lengths on Run Dusty Run. It's Run Dusty Run in second and San Edwin third. They're clearing the finish line. It's still Seattle Slew, and he's opened it out to 4.5. Then Run Dusty Run and San Edwin. They're coming on to the wire, and it's
A sport that waited over 20 years for a Triple Crown winner now had 2 in a span of just 4 years. And even though a Florida-bred colt named Affirmed won the Triple Crown the following year, the incredible story of Seattle Slew remains one of horse racing's most enduring legends. Seattle Slew continues to earn the Taylors a handsome living. As a stud, he was once estimated to be worth a staggering $120 million. He went on to sire 85 stakes winners and allowed Mickey Taylor to make the greatest understatement in thoroughbred racing history. The one-time logger said, "I'll never have to cut another tree."
I think the Taylors have been a fairy tale for people who would just had the idea they'd like to get into racing and don't have too much money and go with a budget and maybe a good advisor, and to see that they can strike it rich and really hit the jackpot.
I hope no one goes in to buy a yearling thinking, well, these guys did it, I think I will too. Because it really is a remarkable and hard to imagine story.
At today's auctions, the story of Seattle Slew remains in the back of every bidder's mind. Like the Taylors, they come looking for more than just a champion bloodline. They hope to find the one horse that can go beyond his thoroughbred lineage and ascend into the realm of Triple Crown champion.
Well, they say Joe Louis had 9 brothers, couldn't fight a lick, but he was the world's greatest, you know, so that's the way horses are, too.
And so it is with Seattle Slew.